There you go. Didn't see that. Let's start all over again. Take two. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So in this week's episode, it's start of another new year, hoping for better things to come. There have been a lot of things that's happened in the past year or so, or in the most recent week. So we'll be talking about how a problem has risen in an iPhone plant where workers are going on strike. So let's find out what the main issue here is. And there's some alarming news with regards to, from last year we were thinking that the supply chain issues or the shortage of many things, especially technology wise, would be alleviated as the year moves on from last year, and thinking that this year would be any better. Well, don't jump to conclusions, as because of the Chinese New Year, which is around the corner, around early February. It's going to affect the global supply chains. Actually, I think they've halted their operations presently in anticipation of that. So there's going to be a major significant impact on many manufacturing firms worldwide. Next, we'll also be talking about something interesting. So because of the supply chain limitations of all companies, McDonald's is in short supplies of French fries. So guess what happens to that and what are they going to do about it? So stay tuned for that one. And next we'll be talking about how Amazon, for all of its strengths in cornering the e-commerce market, are also delving into other industries, so to speak, by selling customers actual products, so competing with other resellers in their platform. But anyway, so Amazon has recently launched a fitness tracker, Halo View. So we'll talk about that. So if it's something that you will be interested in, or is it something that you should be cautious in terms of using Amazon technology here. And finally, we'll be talking about something very interesting in terms of electric vehicles. And if you think of electric vehicles, Tesla is number one in that aspect. Now, in terms of fully autonomous, Tesla has been trying to market their product as a fully autonomous, which they haven't proven and haven't reached that stage yet. And yet other companies, or in this case Zoox, a company, is able to do that. So stay tuned for that one. So we'll discuss that as well. Anyway, so to start off, as mentioned, so Apple is under investigation with the an Indian iPhone plant. Apple is investigating regarding an iPhone plant in India after workers goes on strike after mass food poisoning. Now, is this by accident or is it intentional? Well, regardless, the question is, what is the company going to do here? So this is from the verge.com. So let's take a closer look. There you go. So the local media report has reported 150 workers that were hospitalized regarding the said issue here. And obviously, Apple has been manufacturing their products, especially their iPhones, outside of the United States, where reduction of cost is tantamount. Another reason is they want to penetrate the Indian market by circumventing the process of, if they were to produce iPhone products within the country, there will be lesser tariff, so to speak. And in such cases here, it's interesting to find out that there was a big issue such as food poisoning that happened here. So let's take a closer look. So you can see here that Apple is sending independent auditors to investigate the iPhone assembly, as mentioned, in India, after poor working and living conditions at the plant prompted workers to go on strike. Now, obviously, this issue is not just isolated to companies such as Apple, but trying to save on cost with regards to because they are offering very expensive item, and to cut on that, either you increase the price, which is not a long-term solution, or you reduce cost in any way possible, and obviously shifting your production in other regions, and then getting minimum wage for your employees to build your product is another way of going about it. But anyway, so let's see here. So the facility in India, which was operated by long-term Apple partner Foxconn, so is under investigation when Reuters found out women working at the plant were laboring in extreme difficult conditions. And is it negligence on the part of Apple that they didn't know about it? The fact that they partnered with a company with such reputation such as Foxconn, so whether that's true or not, they need to take actions. Otherwise, governments needs to step in here and protect the interests of the employees here. Anyway, it was mentioned that they were forced to sleep on the floor in crowded dorms and sharing toilets without running water. So you can just imagine the cross-cutting means that, companies such as Apple, which obviously it's their responsibility because they hired or partnered with the companies such as Foxconn to try to find ways to reduce cost and at the expense of your employees here. And obviously with the ongoing pandemic, so you can just imagine how dangerous that situation is. And it was mentioned that recently an outbreak of food poisoning left 150 individuals hospitalized, prompting workers to strike and shut the plant back in December. So imagine that if you're working for a big multinational, multi-billion company, and this is the work conditions that they are providing to you, and question is, why are they not providing a better what do you call this, situation for your employees here, which I think we deserve, or all employees deserve, some decency in terms of work conditions. And Apple's not just the only company that has issue with this one. We've talked about Amazon's best practice on how they deal with employees in their work warehouses, as well as delivery people as well. In response, so let's go back. In response, Apple says it's put the plant on probation, though the company hasn't said what this means for Foxconn or workers who assembles its iPhones. So obviously, is it just for Apple to do damage control, so saying all those PR things to deviate from the main fact that there is a main issue in their plant as well? Now, it goes on to say that a spokesperson for Apple told that following recent concerns about food safety and accommodation conditions at Foxconn, Spri Perumbudor, I'm assassinating his name. Anyway, we dispatched independent auditors, and we found out that some of the remote dormitory accommodations and dining rooms being used for employees do not meet our requirements. And we are working with the supplier to ensure that a comprehensive set of corrective action are rapidly implemented, which is, in my estimation, that it's just a cop-out for the big company, which is Apple, to shield from responsibility the fact that they're not using the Apple company to produce the product, but using other third-party companies, or in this case Foxconn, to lay the blame here, which is obviously the fact that the brand of Apple is being produced in that facility, and yet they don't have the highest standard for working conditions. The fact that they've been advertising in terms of how working conditions in their company is tremendous, but in terms of facilities in their manufacturing plants is a totally different situation. So I don't know. So what do you think? Should Apple face charges, penalties for having this kind of situation? Now, obviously, companies working in other countries has different requirements and penalties and such. So obviously, this also provides a lot of difficulties if a company such as Apple, who is a global company, in terms of the logistics aspects of the supplies, the shortage of supplies as mentioned earlier, and then now dealing with workers, especially the manufacturing side, whether you're Apple or Samsung, but you rarely hear any issues with Samsung, right? But I don't know. Could be just a anomaly, so to speak. But obviously, Apple is a big multinational company that it's known worldwide here. So that's why we have high expectation for companies that's selling you a very expensive item, and yet they're spouting being environmentally active, and then very concerned with employees' welfare and so forth. And yet, several issues always props up, whether it's their fault or not. Do they take responsibility, or do they just divert it to other aspects as well? Anyway, as mentioned in the article as well, Apple has been regularly criticized for labor conditions, so it's not the first time, and it's not going to be the last time. That's why it keeps on proliferating with their issues, and obviously at the back of it is to maximize, generate high profit with regards to their products, in particular iPhones, tablets, desktops, and laptops, and whatnots. And Foxconn is another company that's had been under scrutiny for having sweatshop conditions and worst case scenario, having suicide cases here. So it's something that's ongoing, and question is, what would Apple do to mitigate this, or will they continue despite knowing those conditions? Well, we'll wait and see. Yeah. Anyway, next we'll be talking about, as mentioned, the global supply chain issues. It's ongoing, and it's not changing anytime soon. With particular in China, the Chinese New Year is just around the corner, as mentioned. They've already halted their operation, so this is going to exacerbate, and especially if you have many manufacturing companies that is based in China, or you have companies that produce key parts to other products. It's going to delay that, and question is, what are companies planning to do here? Are they going to, as we've experienced, always stackouts in their supplies, or are they going to find alternative ways to combat this? Because if this were going to be a recurring situation, this is always bad for business, regardless of circumstances here. Anyway, according to businessinsider.com, as mentioned, Chinese New Year threatens to further disrupt the global supply chain as smaller shippers in China suspend services for the holidays earlier than usual here. So let's see. So as mentioned earlier, shipping containers are typical the most affordable, cheaper means of transporting goods, products, and supplies for many manufacturing companies worldwide. And many have been relying on China as a means for lower cost for manufacturing. And obviously with the pandemic that's happening, and you can just imagine almost 2 years ago, that it was at this time where the start of the pandemic risen and caused what has happened years later. Anyway, so with the current situation here, so let's take a closer look. So Chinese New Year is earlier than last year, and will be complicating the especially long quarantine requirements for sailors returning to China. So it creates a lot of dilemmas and issues. So how companies deal with the situation will matter more, or find alternative ways to meet that requirement, especially for tech companies, smartphone makers, car manufacturers, and all the technology, especially if you're into gaming, PC, you have the GPU shortage, and then the CPU shortage, and then smartphone devices, and even Apple has stated they had to reduce their target because of not just the demand, but the supplies, availability of supplies here. Anyway, in some cases, sailors are facing 7-week quarantine. So if people are going to be detained for that long, and obviously that's going to halt operations significantly here. So even to the point that shipping service providers for smaller ports in China has also suspended services earlier this year. So you can just imagine the pile up, the queue, that the deliveries or supplies that you're expecting in the coming weeks or months has to be delayed even further. So thinking that the first half of the year would be a tremendous boon, since we've somewhat trying to get some back of normalcy from the pandemic in 2020. Then 2021 is sort of a year where we try to recover of what has happened in the past year or so, and then thinking that we're already almost 2 years from the pandemic. Then the situation has still persist, and I think it's going to cause a lot of delays in the foreseeable next 2, 3, or even 5 years. So I don't know how long before we'll get to some normalcy in terms of supply, wherein you would go to a store and expect the item to be readily available, and there won't be any stockouts, or people queuing in line, having to pre-order and stuff, because as experience shows, if you're going to buy technology products, especially a new one, why would you pre-order? Wait until the reviews have come in so that you can see for yourself if the product is worldwide. So looking forward to the Steam Deck release this year. Hopefully it gets to our region here sometime soon here. Anyway, going back to the article here, where was I? So as mentioned here, so some shipping companies have already suspended services ahead of the new year. So obviously further exacerbating the supply chain issues worldwide. And the main disruption is exacerbated by two critical factors, as I mentioned. So production. This year is pertaining to the Chinese New Year that falls on February 1st. So a full 12 days earlier than the previous year. And then in November, China's COVID-0 policy has sailors anticipating longer than unusual or usual quarantine periods before they can make their way back on land. So meaning two factors that's causing a lot of delays and headaches for many companies that's who were expecting that they could resume operations in the most timely manner, and that's not what's happening now. So the new timeline is being especially felt in China's southern manufacturing hub. So I think that's in Guangzhou, I think, where independent shipping provider service the region. So if that's halted, so you cannot continue with your production here. And even though it's somewhat a post-pandemic situation, but it can still be felt even months or years later here. So you have major global shippers, including Ocean Network Express and Hapag-Lloyd, have already halted new container bookings to smaller ports in China. Now, if you remember, even last year in the Suez Canal, there was a significant delay because of an accident. So we're assuming everything would return to normal operations once we deem that the cases of COVID-19 has been reduced, has been contained, sort of. But that's not the case here. So you have to pay extra attention in with the working conditions of employees. Otherwise, if the virus can spread quickly, then you could just imagine what happened way back in 2020. So we don't want to have a repeat of that situation here. So meaning the longer than usual suspension of feeder services could have a knock-on effect on impact on the global supply chain. So so meaning that the issue is still here, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. But the question, if you're a multinational company that relies on on finished goods to sell to your customers, then what are we supposed to do? Especially like I mentioned, for Apple, it has reduced their potentiality to generate maximum revenue here. And think about it, for the PlayStation 5, even though it's a very sought after item, there's no availability, so you cannot sell even though there's a high demand. And issues with scalpers aside, if they cannot produce enough units to suffice the demand or the wants of the market, even I mean I'm interested to purchase one, maybe in the future, but not now. But for others who can't wait, are looking ways to circumvent. But if you're patient, I think eventually the supply would return to some normalcy, but sometime in the far future, not in the near future here. So question here is, how will this affect consumers? How will this affect the manufacturers, the companies themselves? And obviously, if there's a limited supply and high demand, prices tends to increase. That's why the GPU shortage has still been ravaging the market up to this point. Thinking that if you were patient from last January to this year, if you waited that long, would you be able to buy the latest GPU? Not necessarily. And based on my personal experience, I bit the bullet when I bought the 3070 RTX 3070 early January last year, and I was thinking it was a bit too expensive compared to its MSRP. But if I wanted to have a functioning computer back then I had to buy it. Otherwise, my components are already complete, yet there's no GPU. Then it won't make sense to build the PC anyway. So not everyone has that same case. So you take it with a grain of salt. So how you deal with the limitations, especially if it's work related, if it's needed for your job or for your business, then obviously you have to take into account the additional cost that you're going to pay here. Anyway, hoping for the best that everything will resume in the considered new normal in our aspects here. Anyway, so segueing to another supply chain issue. So the global pandemic is still here, and limited the shortage of supplies. Even the food industry, in particular McDonald's in Japan, had to cut down their rationing of French fries of all products. Obviously, it's synonymous when you eat at McDonald's fast food that you order any type of food with French fries galore, and even my kids like their French fries. And in this case, according to the article, where was it? Yes, at businessinsider.com, McDonald's Japan is rationing French fries as the fast food chain can't import enough potatoes amid the supply chain crisis. So it's a big issue that even big companies such as McDonald's has to face reality. There's a shortage, cannot supply everyone with the normal quantities that they normally offer, so they have to obviously readjust their strategy, and obviously they still have to meet the demands of their consumers. So let's read on here. So what's interesting, for the next week or so, customers at McDonald's Japan will only be able to buy small size serving. So you cannot buy medium size or large size here. So this is due because of the restrictions of potato shortage as the global supply chain crisis hits imports. So it's not just in the US, in Europe, but also in the Asia region here. So we've just talked about earlier regarding the ports in China are shutting down. And obviously, it's not just China that supplies a vast variety of products or raw materials, but other countries as well. So if you're producing potatoes, not just in Asia, but in America's region, or even in Europe region, or in the EU. So companies like McDonald's in Japan is finding way to stave off the depletion of supply, so to speak. And Japan is a major importer of cooked and prepared frozen potatoes. So getting a reliable source will be a daunting task. And rather than have your products sold out, which can happen if they don't if they don't ration it properly. And obviously customers will not be too thrilled if they were to suddenly go to McDonald's, then there's no French fries anymore, and that could significantly hamper their business as a whole. Because obviously, if you eat at a fast food, you don't just order the French fries, but you order combinations of items that they offer in their menu. And if there's no French fries, especially kids who prefer their French fries, then they would go to a different fast food store, which they would lose on the opportunity rather than miss out. Still, commend them for doing such a bold strategy here. Anyway, so McDonald's Japanese, so let's go back. So McDonald's Japanese outlets are suspending sale of large and medium-sized French fries, as mentioned. So customers at all 2,900 McDonald's stores in Japan will only be able to buy small servings for about a week. So it's a short inconvenience, so to speak. And knowing that there are almost 3,000 branches or stores, McDonald's stores in Japan, just goes to show how popular their products are in their country. So they're instituting a policy of following a potato shortage caused by the global supply chain disruptions, which hit operations at the port of Vancouver. So meaning their supplies are coming in the Canada region here. So what they're doing is they are proactively securing supplies with alternative means. So obviously, if they can produce it in their own country, that would be beneficial, so they won't be too reliant on other countries. But obviously, if the demand is such that it goes beyond the production capability of their region, obviously they'll be tied up or reliant on other regions to supply their demands. And obviously, if there's any disruption, which, it's a common theme that we'll be talking about today, it will be a growing problem now. Obviously, potatoes is not, I mean, it's a basic commodity that the people eat, but I don't think that it's a life threatening if they don't eat potatoes, that people would, suddenly die left and right there. But it just goes to show you an example of how critical global shortage could be, and how could it impact, consumers and businesses as well here. Anyway, what's interesting here, it's not the first time that the company has dealt with the crisis here. So back in 2014, the company outlet has to limit the customer purchases again due to a U.S. labor dispute caused by shipping delays. So it's not just possibly in Canada, but in the U.S. But the question here is, I think moving forward, companies, whether it's Amazon, Google, Apple, or in this case McDonald's, moving forward, they have to be able to know that crises will happen at inopportune times. And question is, what contingencies are you putting in place so that things like this doesn't significantly hamper the business process as a whole here. So that's why reducing the output or the portions that you sell to your customers is a good solution. But obviously, if people clamor for more of your product, obviously you don't want to miss out on that opportunity to sell as many products as you can. Imagine if Apple had to do that, reduce their sales because of the shortage of supplies, then that would be spell trouble for Tim Cook here, right? If you think about it. Anyway, continuing with our discussion, so Amazon, in this case, sad to say, in a good positive discussion, they're not in hot trouble. So, but sort of in a trouble in a sense of how they're diversifying their strategy in terms of business, focusing on being an e-commerce platform, but also offering cloud services and offering product services. You have streaming, video, and then now they're offering products that consumers can use themselves, which is kind of ironic because this cuts into the partnership that resellers are doing in their platform, and yet they're doing the same things that other sellers, which is kind of anti-competitive. That's why they're being in antitrust cases because of things like this. Remember the product that they're offering last year? I think, is it the Apple iRobot? Amazon Robot. Let me see. Amazon Robot. Astro Robot, that's right. So, where was it? And yet there were issues regarding how safe is their product, especially, I don't know if I'm going to be too excited to purchase products that are what do you call this? Let's see here. Products that are made by Amazon, and then if they notice the products that they're using, they collect data from their customers, and obviously gathering data is tantamount, it's king, because you could sell those information to other resellers, or the company can use it to their advantage here. But the question is how safe it is, right? But anyway, going back to the main article here, so Amazon is offering a new product, as mentioned, Amazon's Halo Fit View Fitness Tracker, which is, obviously they're capitalizing on people getting fit in this particular period. And question is, will it provide a better means to stay healthy here? And again, my main concern here, as mentioned here, keeping track of your health is one thing if it's just an isolated issue here. But what happens if you update the system here or your device? Will it be transferred to Amazon here, which is, I'm very doubtful if that's going to happen. And I don't want that to, you have other platforms already. You have YouTube, Google, Facebook gathering your data to their benefit, and yet we're not making any headway here. And would I pay $60 here or 3,000 pesos for a product that they're going to get my information and use it to their benefit? So it's for consumers to decide here. So let's take a closer look here. So obviously, for staying healthy, if you're aiming to get more sleep or just want to stay on top of your health, the Halo View from product is a budget-friendly option. And here's the key interesting aspect what what Amazon is offering here. Obviously, if they were to market a product that's very expensive, no one will buy their product because obviously everyone has associated Amazon products to be inexpensive here. And obviously they have to cut cost here. That's why I'm very critical of how Amazon treat their employees and partners. Obviously, their number one customer, their number one rule is treating their customers tremendously here. But that's not always the case because of fake accounts, fake resellers selling in fake or not authentic products in their platform, so which confuses consumers. So I don't know how does that help consumers in the long run, right? How do you distinguish fake from original products that are made by actual companies? So that's why we've discussed it in the past that companies like Nike even left their platform because of such issues, because fake products are being promoted over theirs, because obviously people would be confused as to if they saw a cheaper pricing on their product. And typically obviously Nike, even Adidas, sell their product at a premium price. So if people then would say if they bought a cheaper one and then it's not authentic, then it breaks down easily, then they blame the main company, not the one who sold it, not the company or the platform that allowed it to proliferate, which is a whole bunch of discussion here. Anyway, going back, so the point here is it gives you the ability to monitor your heart rate, your sleep, and other personal insights. But the question here is Amazon going to track your information, gather that data? And if you were to read below, Amazon is taking an additional 25% of the Halo, so they can make it affordable. But here's the key: to give you a full year of Halo membership with purchase. Now, does this mean that the information will be relayed to the company, or will it be stay within your persons here? So no matter what bells and whistles the company tries to do here, I'm still very apprehensive in terms, especially for companies that are providing a lot of sort of benefits at the front end, and yet what we don't know at the end is what they do with our information here. So obviously there are a lot of ways to keep track of your health, devices that doesn't need to be relayed to big companies like Amazon here. But that's my take only here. But what do you think? Should you be excited to buy Amazon products? Who knows? Anyway, that's just my opinion. Anyway, going back. So lastly, something interesting here that we've been talking about this for quite some time in last year, especially if you talk of electric vehicles. It's synonymous, as mentioned, with Tesla vehicles. And one of the things I'm very critical of how Tesla has been promoting their vehicle as a fully autonomous vehicle, and to be considered fully autonomous, you need level 5 certification here, and yet they have only reached level 2. My thought at the time was, it would take companies years or even decades before reaching level 5 status, and yet another company was able to do that. And how comfortable am I if that would be the norm here? But at least they're testing it. But again, that's another one of my major concerns is using actual people to test the technology here. And it's kind of interesting. So let me show you what I mean here. So where was it? Here we have a company here, Zoox, Zoox, is a company that's providing transportation in a different manner. So they're not necessarily selling you vehicles, so they're sort of like a EV taxi of sorts. So I want to show you here. So if you look closely at the vehicle, so they're pegging as not a car. So it's considered to be a vehicle of sorts. So if you were to look at it closely, it looks nothing like a regular vehicle. So if you look inside the vehicle, so it looks like a typical taxi. So it has only seats on both ends, and you may notice there's no driving stick here. Obviously, you're not supposed to drive it, and the point here is that it can drive itself. Now let's go on further. Oops, there you go. So you can see here it's very squared shape. So they're saying it's not a car, it's actually a vehicle. So you can just imagine the experience here. So I think this is typically what you see in rides in theme parks, I think. So you just go inside the vehicle and it will transport you to wherever. But obviously, in theme parks, they have a rail system or a path where those vehicles would move around to. But this is not the case. They have their own set of paths. Obviously, if you want to go from point A to point B, it has to be programmed, and they have to find ways to circumvent the road. How effective can they be? That's another question here. So you can see it's very simple here. So it can accommodate 4 people. So it's meant for transporting people. And the key here, as you can see here in the subtext here, the vehicle is capable of level 5 autonomy here. Now, how effective are they? Obviously, there are a lot of questions here because just being level 5 capable doesn't mean it's perfect. Because obviously, just like people, you haven't perfected driving. Even people who have 10, 20, or even more, more decades of experience can still make mistakes. The question is, can the machine do a better job than a human can? So let's see here. So, so they're already comparing Tesla here. So they're only level 2, and obviously it takes a lot of complexity and engineering to be able to reach that threshold of having level 5 autonomy here. And maybe Tesla should get people from MOOCs here to be able to reach that technology quicker. And obviously Tesla is more for consumer use, for purchasing their product, rather than MOOCs here, Zoox here. So let's look further. So it's not about driving here. So you can see here they're testing it already. They've shown that they have test samples that does this. So can it do an effective job, not just citywide, but also everywhere else? Now, obviously, it's not an easy thing, as you can see in their production in Oakland here. So it's not just the physical part. I think the software part is the key here. So no matter what advances they made in the vehicle itself, it always boils down to the technology that they're using here. So I was surprised when I found out this company, Zoox, and it's a small company. As you can see, they don't build a lot of it, but they're building it, and it's interesting. It looks promising, more promising than what Tesla is offering in terms of its capability now, in terms of mass consumption. Obviously, they're targeting for a different audience, so they might sell it to companies that sell it as a fleet of taxis of sorts. And eventually, imagine you don't have to buy your car, you just have to hop in and then hop out to wherever your point of destination. Now, obviously, there are limitations with this type of configurations. Obviously, what if you need to bring more people to a different destination? Let's say more than 4 people. Do you have a bigger carriage here? Or what about if you need to go to the province and move stuff? And obviously, its technology, as you can see here, it can moves diagonally. And the question here is, can it handle driving conditions better than a Tesla vehicle will? And obviously, it has to use a lot of technology. As you can see, I think externally there are interesting integrations here. I think you can see here, there are 4 points here at the top. I think that's LiDAR's technology that they're using. So they use LiDAR. Do they use infrared? I'm not sure. And then there's actual cameras, so they can see a vision of the surroundings. Let me see here. So actually here you can see that it's being remotely tested. So just to see how the vehicle can handle road conditions here. So the vehicle of handling road is not the main problem. It's the AI, the autonomy here. So can they do a great job of transporting people? So let's see here. Let's skip a bit. Yeah, so the question here is the ability to handle road conditions here. So and the issue here, I think as many who are optimistic on adopting adopting electric or autonomous vehicles, whether it's electric or not, is how safe it is. Can it be 100% or not? Because if it's not 100%, why would I trust an autonomous vehicle to drive or have my life on its hands, similar to how an airplane works, right? Even though an airplane has an autopilot feature, you don't see any company letting the airplane drive itself. So how about on land? So this is what you can see, how the vehicle is seeing its perimeter or surrounding. So you can see here, it can visualize the different obstacles around it. But the question is, can it be 100% accurate? That's my question here, because no amount of glamorization, how beautiful it looks, how aesthetically, how effective it can do its job, and it has to be effective 100% of the time. Otherwise, it's a disaster waiting to happen if that's the case here. That's why I'm very optimistic, but it has to be cautious also. So you can see here, they have diagrams here of obstacles that if they were to cross in their peripheral, they would react immediately. And we have major concerns as to, like, when Tesla were videos that shown that Tesla was moving slowly, not too fast, but it saw an animal crossing its path and it was not able to recognize, and poof, it was to hit in head-on collision. So imagine if that were a person, a small person, a kid at that. So I don't want to bet on technology just because it works 90% of the time or 99%. It has to work 100% of the time before, because obviously to avoid human error, right? Otherwise, why would I use that technology if it's not 100% effective? Anyway, that's my opinion anyhow. Anyway, so you can see here, it has multiple sensors as mentioned, so to make it more safer. But is it the safest? That's a question. So the adaptation of vehicle, now obviously, yes, obviously people drive, that's why it causes accidents, especially for doing difficult maneuvers, parallel parking, and so forth. So I think it takes, that's why I think more so than as much as I want to rely on technology, but at the end of the day, there are some things that people have to do themselves. And if machines can help us along the way, then sure. But eliminating it totally would make us too dependent in the future, if you think about it. We used to be able to use a typewriter before, but obviously using a computer makes it more easier and more mistake-free, because you can edit it quickly in a computer rather than a typewriter. But if you notice that many of the high-end keyboards nowadays have that tactile feeling of a keyboard, of a typewriter, because it makes more fluid if you're using traditional technology here. Now, question here is, will it be adopted really soon? And they're test fitting it now in actual cities, I think in California, in San Francisco in particular, I think. So question here is, will they be able to do a tremendous job of providing the service? And I think if they can produce enough vehicles to support the demand of the market, and I think eventually people would adopt it more quickly, especially if there's a better alternative. Now obviously, if you have a vehicle, you want to use it, then so be it. But if there's limited transportation availability, then there's a market for this technology here. But if there are other public transportations that's more quicker, then I think people will adopt it more quickly here. But just goes to show that Tesla is on notice now, because other companies have already overtaken their in terms of how they've improved their technology here. So question here is, how fast can Tesla improve, rather than focus on other aspects here? And the fact that Tesla has other problems in terms of hardware wise, right? The recent video that I just discussed last Wednesday, where Tesla has to recall 500,000 vehicles, which is kind of alarming, meaning you have to QC your products tremendously, and software is another issue that they have to contend with. So meaning Tesla is always on an uphill battle. And for me personally, I think Tesla hasn't reached to that point that it makes sense to shift from a combustible engine to an electric vehicle, in particular a Tesla vehicle at that. So time can only tell. I might change my mind, but it is what it is as of this moment. Anyway, thanks for joining me again this week. It's the new year again, hoping for a better year than what we had last year and the year before that. Anyway, any questions regarding the topics discussed today, I'll leave the link in the description below, so you can check it out there. If you're interested on different topics, business topics that I always discuss, you can look at my other previous discussions here. As always, see you again, same time, same channel here at Business Focus. You might be interested in checking out my other videos for guide tutorials and tips, or you might also be interested in this looking at the playlist for business updates. So took discussed a lot of interesting topics here, especially in the last one regarding Tesla here. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll see everyone next week. Stay safe and take care.